Welcome back to the Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, everyone. And in this video, we're gonna go ahead and talk about the Android category. So hope you all enjoy. Subscribe if you're new, of course, for more content. At any point, feel free to chime in. But of course, since this is gonna be a team building guide slash a Suju summon type video, make sure that you kind of listen to what I gotta say, to put it bluntly, and just kind of listen to what I say, and hopefully that might change your opinion if you don't think they're very good or why you don't think they're very good, etc., etc. Because long story short, quick spoiler, I do think that all these units are very, very good for various reasons, namely the defense. Like, I think this is one of the best defensive teams in the game, just overall, which is one of the things we are going to talk about in this video. So to begin, shout out to the man 17, last 120% leader in the game to get a category, but he finally got it. He finally got one, so shout out to him. And of course, we are talking about the Android category. So also, I kind of want to get out of the way really quick before we proceed, if you should summon type deal. So it looks like the STR version of the Android 21 and the Android 16 down here are not going to be festival exclusives, just the 17. So, honestly, the banner is highly skippable in that scenario, especially if you just want those other units. You don't care about the 17 for whatever reason. Of course, 17 and Android 21 basically have the same leader skill. A little bit different, but basically the same. It's the 150 across the board for her, and then 170 attack and HP versus 130 defense for this guy. So it's the same thing, basically. You know, she's a little bit more balanced if you wanted to focus more on defense, which I can make the argument that she's a little bit better in that scenario because this is a defensive team, but I could also make the argument that 17 is better because, I mean, more HP and more attack is always a freaking nice thing to have, right? And I think 130 is good enough. So otherwise, it's a skip in that scenario, but otherwise, if you want to have these units right now, you don't want to wait, of course, go for it. I think this is a really good banner in general. Just these three units, I think, if you're interested in playing this team, that's the main thing. If you have Android characters, you obviously would want to use them, you know, and you would want to summon. But I think this is a very niche team, which is why they get the 170 attack and HP. That's typically the case with the nicher teams, if that's even a word. But anyways, so moving on, right? That's my quick analysis of the banner, should you summon. And I think, like I was saying, this is one of the better teams, especially defensively in the game, and here's why. So we're going to start off with Android number 17. And this is basically my full team. You guys can kind of see it. I'm going to talk about it. I don't really mind that, but I couldn't really do it on the layout over here where I get to show the links and all that stuff because it's not updated yet. But anyways, so Android number 17, 170. He also has the option for super physical types. Now, quick spoiler, I did not go over, or disclaimer, I did not go over the super physical units in consideration for this. Typically, there's like one or two units that are a part of these type of sub-leader skills that are really good options on the team as a replacement for a unit or two. I did not cover that, but just off the top of my head, I would say that the physical support Gohan Super Saiyan 2 that offers 35% attack and defense is a really good option for this team. Just really quickly, that's what I'm going to point out. He is a great option for this team. Just in general, he is totally worth having a spot if you want to go ahead and do that. Another thing, another observation here is that 17 here is a super type unit alongside this full trio of super tech types here. So yeah, 16 is a super type unit as well. Reason why I pointed that out is when it comes to the Android 21, which we'll talk about momentarily, she does not have a lot of villain-based support on her team, which isn't a bad thing, but just pointing that out there. Immense damage and lowers attack and defense. So this is interesting because the attack debuff is not very significant, but it is something. That will help out a lot in terms of the overall team's defense ability. Like, if there's one team I think would have a really easy time against a Super Battle Road stage, not easy, but an easier time than some of the more offensive-focused teams, this one would. And when it comes to Super Battle Road, you typically want to have that blend of offense and defense and stuff like that, and this unit is no different. He literally epitomizes that. So again, it's not super significant, but it does help, you know, ever so slightly. Passive skill 120 when performing a super attack, that's good enough. And his real meat and potatoes here, if you will, is the passive here. He is able to offer the allies 3 key and 60% defense. Now, understand you're going to have two of these. In the best case scenario, you could take one and then take the Android 21 friend, whatever. But in the scenario where you have two of these, this is really, really, really good. The reason being is because, again, this is a defense-focused team. I would love more offense support. Don't get me wrong. It's just when you look at units like this, wow. He already mitigates 40%, and he tanks very well, especially at rainbow levels, you know, with orbs invested. But that was the main knock on him. And in units like him that rely on having a high defensive number stat, also alongside having a modest but not great mitigation in the passive, but also able to mitigate, you know, super attacks and stuff, he is going to benefit greatly from that, especially because he needs to be in a position to get hit several times so he can get his attack up. He is going to benefit tremendously from this leader, right? And it's only fitting because it's 17 and 17. So, like, units like that, they love that. Units like this, one of the best walls in the game. Notice I said walls instead of tanks. I think he's a great tank, one of the best tanks in general anyway. Same, synonym. But he starts off with 80% defense. Gets an additional 30%, which is part of the reason why you might not want to put that extra ally on the team, but you can make the argument that it doesn't truly matter if you run a super physical unit in there that's not an android anyway, because if you're running that Gohan, you're still offering that defense anyway via the passive. But anyways, he gets an additional 30% per android category ally in your team, which is a maximum of 90. So these two together, what's that, 170? I think that's 170, yeah? High chance to guard against all attacks as well. Not even a medium chance. A high chance to activate Janemba's passive, which allows him to block against all hits. You know, Gohan, comparatively, the STR Gohan has that too, but his is really low. Like, it's a medium chance, and it barely activates, but, again, one of the best units in the game. Not to mention raises defense. So we have a lot, and then we move into a couple of other units, but these units don't really capitalize on that defense as much. So, again, that is great. Also, when HP is 77% or below, he's able to mitigate damage at a 40% clip. So 40% again is modest. It's not great, but it's good enough, especially because there's no restriction between normal and super attacks. When HP dips low, he's going to still be getting 60% defense up. Again, that also could be impacted by having over 10,000 defense at rainbow value. And then on top of that, he could take a super attack for 40% reduced damage. And then you couple that with other supports or other items, he's a really good tank. And again, a lot of that same stuff applies to Super 17 too, which is why I really, really like this. And in my first draft of this, I was looking at it like, yo, this team really needs another support or two. But then I realized that they did a great thing by making him a support unit just for key, just in general, just for key. Because some of the links are a little bit finicky. Like, for example, Android 16, he doesn't have any key links with the team at all, I don't think. So anyways, moving on to Android 21. Immense damage and recovers HP. This is where you get that, that more of that defensive focused integration of the team, because both of the 21s are able to heal you with their super attacks. This one in particular does transform. Her restriction is 30% chance to eat, cell, and transform when HP is 50% or above, starting from the 4th turn of the battle. So I believe that's Turles' restriction. It's very, very similar to Turles' restriction. I think Turles is actually 80% or below, but she's basically almost always going to get the opportunity to transform. She's going to be very, very good at transforming like Turles, like Vegeta, more so probably like Vegeta. She's not going to be one of those units that takes a while to transform, or like the LR androids, or not LR androids, excuse me, the LR Potara unit and Fusion unit. So the other LR duo units. So when she transforms, though, leader skill stays the same, of course. Super attack changes, reduces attack and defense. Not great reduce, which I would obviously rather have, but beggars can't be choosers. It still helps, because that in tandem with Android 17, all of a sudden, again, more defense, for this team overall, because they're taking a little bit less. I think this has been calculated when you reduce attack to reduce the attack by like 7k damage, which might be the difference between life or death. So who knows? She is self-sufficient, first and foremost, still, which is nice. Her attack and defense jumps to a 130% gain. Not the best in the game, but boy, that's really, really good. That's really, really good for a unit like this on this type of setup with a 170% leader. She also recovers 13% HP at the start of the turn. I said this in my previous video last night where I went over this unit. I would honestly rather have the heal here because of the chance of the additional super attack also healing, but she does it in the passive, which is a little bit more consistent, assuming she ever misses a super. But I mean, she's almost guaranteed a super anyway, so it doesn't really matter. She's disabling the enemy's guard when performing a super attack. Another thing I mentioned in the video last night is this applies for the entire team. So if you're up against an AGL team and you have a full STR team, like Extreme STR or whatever, and she's on that team, she launches a super attack against them, all of a sudden, she does not do reduced damage to that AGL unit anymore, nor does the rest of your team for that entire turn. So your other STR units, like STR Janemba, will not do reduced damage against an AGL opponent that would have type advantage. They just do neutral. Just normal damage, no increase unless it's a crit or things of that nature, but just natural damage. And that's really nice to see. Not great. Like Ultra Instinct Goku has that too, but I guess it's just kind of a thing. She really didn't need much else. She's basically the same unit. Didn't really need much else, though. She also, on a side note, no longer debuffs, which I would rather have, by the way. She changes the debuff to being up here, which, I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I'd much rather have her transform, but this is really nice, too, because of the viability on the front side. And the fact that it's for 2 turns, what happens is she debuffs their attack by 20%, which is pretty significant. I'd argue that might even be more than this. Like I said, this is calculated at like 7,000 or something stupid like that. But still, she debuffs that, and then all your other units take reduced damage for 2 turns, which if she's on rotation, that's enough time for her to show up again. So she's there, she activates it, next turn she's not there, and then following turn she is there again. And of course, that could stack if you're running double 121s on the team. You know, like this leader, maybe you take a friend or whatever. Like, that's pretty wild. You can get them in a permanent debuff state, you know, where you have them on alternating rotations. And I really like that. I think she's really, really good. This unit here links very, very well, as you would suspect, with Android 21. As you see, they have different names. So, yeah, this one's good. But she's a support unit, also heals. So nothing really to write home about. She's also a TUR, which is interesting. A Transcendent UR level 120, which is nice. She picks up the Rebirth link. She also has Shocking Speed, which the other one doesn't have. Not a big deal, but it's nice to note that. Otherwise, 2 key and 30%. There's a little bit more defense and also some attack there, so she's totally worth being on this team, especially because she's free to play. Definitely deserves a spot. And then the last unit, like I said, this guy, I went over him already. Great defensive unit, has a little bit of offense at the 80% clip. And, you know, I mentioned how this team is going to be one of the better defensive teams, if not the best in the game. One of them, like top 3 probably. But their offense is definitely lacking. They do not have that offensive option to the same exact degree as some of the other teams, namely because right now they don't have an LR unit to put on the team. And yes, they do, but no, they don't at the same time. They don't have a summonable one. So link skills, they leave to be desired. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. These links right here, Android Assault, Tough as Nails, Gentleman is fine, but these 2 types of links, particularly Android Assault, because I believe every Android has that link, like all of them, literally. Like, this link needs to get updated. It's plus 1,000 defense, which defense, like I said, that fits the mold, but like, can you please make it 10% defense? If you're going to make it a defensive link, please update it. We've seen them update links in the past. They really need to revisit some of these links, like this one. I think Sand Warrior Race is another one that's just kind of there at this point of the game. The game's gone on way too long to have these types of links, so if this ever gets updated, it would be, you know, notable, worth mentioning, but it's not. So, as you notice, there's only 5 units here, right? Yeah, there's only 5 units, 2 Android 21s, 117, 116, and we had 1 Super 17. So, the last spot is interesting, because I know a lot of people would say, okay, well, boom, this goes in there. I'm not a huge fan of this unit. I'm just not. Like, it fits the mold to an extent with the 18 key super. Links incredibly well with the leader, in fact. Also, the leader offers 3 key to them too. So like, they're going to basically be guaranteed ultra super. So I'm not taking that away from them. Just this passive is highly outdated. 15,000 is not high enough of a flat boost to be super relevant. They also get no defensive boost. They have no other gimmicks. They're just kind of there. And even at rainbow value, their stats are kind of leaving to be desired. Like, they fit on this team. I guess, you know, it is what it is. I'm being honest. I don't think that they're that great. So that's kind of my thought about them. And they could definitely slide into that last spot. I'll play around with that idea a little bit and put them on the team, because even though they don't have their own natural defense, there are support units that offer defense in the team. And do you really need them to be a defensive unit? Probably not, considering that they have a really high natural defensive stat, or a higher than average defensive stat anyway. I think that's one of the lower stats per LRs, but that's fine. It's not that big of a deal, but I'm not a huge fan of this. Like, if this was 30,000, maybe we'd be talking, you know? So unless they decide they're going to update this unit, more likely we'll get a summonable unit, because most categories that are summonable have access to a summonable LR at some point. So that last spot can obviously go to them. Like I said, they link incredibly well with this guy. This guy is like really good with them, so that's nice. Otherwise, best units I would consider for that last spot, I would avoid units like this. You don't really need the orb changing. I mean, she gets a little bit of attack or whatever and defense, sure, but like not really necessary. The cell variants are interesting. I was considering this guy too, but then noticed he had Shattering the Limit, which isn't the end-all be-all or be-all end-all. But then also I realized there's not any stunners on this team, so like he'll never get access to this additional passive, which is really good. Like, this whole secondary part gives him the Gogeta ability of hitting every type for super effective damage, and an additional 100%. He also is a sealer. If you really need the defense, like, you would honestly, like, if you were taking on Super Battle Road, I'd probably put him in that last spot just because he's a sealer, and I forgot that. And he also has some defense, 80%, and also there's going to be a defensive support. So he fits the mold actually very, very well now that I think about it, but I still wouldn't put him on the team just because he's not able to get that extra offense. And really what you want in this last spot is offense. So bouncing back over to another cell unit, Tech Cell, Extreme Z Awakenable, everything. He is probably going to be the unit that I put in that spot because he's ultimately considered a super. Guaranteed a super with all the support running around and the fact that he also gives himself one extra key, pretty much guaranteed a super. But the issue with him is you probably would want to run a unit like the Tech Android 18 on the team as well, just to be able to produce orbs for him, her, or like the Android number 13, the intelligence one, just to produce orbs. Because while he's great, while his stats are phenomenal, excuse me, these are great stats at maxed out value and stuff like that. The issue with him is, well, what do you do in the scenario where he gets 3 or 4 orbs? He all of a sudden isn't as good as he otherwise would be, at least offensively. I think that defense is fine. I think there's enough defense support here indefinitely to where it doesn't really matter. But 3 or 4 orbs, he's not really getting even 40%, or 50%, excuse me, with just from 3 orbs. And in that scenario, he's not getting that much of a boost. So if you can give him 5, 6, 7, 8 orbs plus per turn, excuse me, he's a great option otherwise. So this is another unit I'm going to consider because he also, again, heals, has a defensive viability, has self-sufficiency, which he doesn't necessarily need, but I digress. He's a great option. Like, he is probably my best option for that last spot until we get a summonable cell, which I'm certain we're going to get. We have to. But I do think he's the best unit for that spot right now, though. And otherwise, there's not a whole lot. I mean, there's units like Hellfighter 17 who are good at offense. He has a 90% attack increase, I believe. Also, self-sufficiency when facing one enemy. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, things like that. Otherwise, the category is very, 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 very niche. There are other cells in here, like STR cell could be a good unit for consideration as well. There are other units like that. I can't really go over every single one. But typically, rule of thumb is if they have the Fierce Battle Link, you should strongly consider them. If they have offensive viability, you should strongly consider them as well. And last but not least, if they have an Extreme Z Awaken, you should strongly consider them too. So for me, I think out the gate that this guy is going to be my new unit for that last spot, just indefinitely for now. And then, of course, the other cell options are good options too. So hopefully I covered pretty much everything. And again, I know that there are a lot of fans of this unit. I know a lot of people have had this unit Rainbow Starred for a long time. I'm not trying to, bag on this unit. Just being honest, right? I don't think that they're going to be that great. And they're going to still do 1,000,000 damage, most likely. It is what it is. So anyways, have an awesome day. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you all in the next Danmachi Memorial Freeze video. That is not what this is. In fact, it's Dokkan, but it's just because I'm about to record Danmachi, but forgive me, Dokkan. Peace out, guys.